Hey guys, so I wanted to make a video on Munchausen syndrome like I mentioned before in my previous video, and that is because this is a disorder that I heard about when I was taking abnormal psychology, and it was like an extra credit question about reading this and figuring out what it is, Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Munchausen syndrome is different from Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Munchausen syndrome is where the person is inducing or faking the illness on themselves for that type of attention or a type of donation or any type of sympathy, anything like that. Munchausen syndrome by proxy is where the person, the caregiver, is inducing or faking that illness on somebody else, like their child, an elderly person, or a person with a disability. All these people that are very vulnerable. I remember just thinking, what the heck? I could not understand what would make someone do this to their own kid, to an elderly person, to a disabled person. I could not understand why someone would do that, and it's a very controversial disorder. It's very difficult to prove, and it's just a very, very sinister, dark disorder. And people with this disorder, it is very difficult for them to ever admit that they have it, because as you can imagine, someone that would do this kind of damage to somebody, inducing it or faking it or whatever, they have a lot of issues, and admitting something like that, it's just almost impossible. So therefore, them getting some type of rehabilitation is very, very difficult, because they usually always remain their innocence with this. So yes, I want to go into some 3 cases, and then we'll talk a little bit about it afterwards. So the first victim is Gypsy Rose Blanchard. So her mother was Dee Dee Blanchard, and her mother claimed that Gypsy had a variety of different illnesses, such as a serious chromosome defect, leukemia, which she was able to pass this off by shaving Gypsy's head and saying that her hair was going to fall out anyway, so you might as well shave it off, and also by giving her chemo pills, which also definitely did not help with her health. I'm not sure how she got the chemo pills, but I'm pretty sure she got them online, because I really do not know how she was able to finagle getting chemo pills any other way. I'm not positive she got them online, but I'm just going to assume that, just for the sake to think that our doctors are not crazy. And muscular dystrophy, epilepsy, severe asthma, sleep anemia, and eye problems and ear problems. These are just a list of things that Dee Dee would claim that Gypsy had from a very young age. Now, from a very young age, it had just been Dee Dee and Gypsy. Gypsy's dad wasn't in her life because Dee Dee and the father never worked out. And that's really unfortunate, because this stuff probably wouldn't have happened if her father was in her life more. I'm not saying it's her father's fault, but he definitely was not around. Dee Dee made it very difficult for him to be around. They moved further away from him, and I'm pretty sure part of that was so that she can have that full control. She made it very difficult for him to see her. So from a very early age, Gypsy Rose got put in a feeding tube, which this is something that you will see that is very common with people with this disorder, is that they want their kid to have that feeding tube so that they can put whatever they want in their system, and also just so that they look more sick. And how they're able to get that is they basically tell the doctors that a kid can't eat, they keep on throwing up, they can't take anything down. They usually get this done at a very young age, to where they aren't feeding their kid, or they are feeding their kid stuff that makes them throw up, so they're inducing this, or they're straight up just not feeding them. There is a lot that goes into this particular case, and there's a documentary called Mother Dearest, or Mommy Dead Dearest, something like that. But there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm going to skim over a lot of it just for the sake of time. So throughout Gypsy's life, she had numerous operations and medications given to her, and none of them were needed. But again, people in this position will often go doctor shopping until they can find the right doctor that'll do it. And due to the alleged brain damage that Gypsy had the mental capacity of a 7-year-old, when she was in fact a lot older than 7. Gypsy was always believed that she was younger than what she was. Gypsy was taken out of school from a very young age so that her mom could homeschool her. And do you think her mom was really homeschooling her the right way? No. Her mother was probably treating her at the age capacity that she wanted, or at the mental capacity that she wanted her daughter to be, which is a very young kid that can't do anything for themselves, and that needs a lot of sympathy, and that needs a lot of help with things, and can't do anything for themselves, and they have to have all these medicines. And it's just, She had a higher pitched voice, and she did act a lot younger. So all these things that Gypsy was saying, it seemed to be true. The only thing that Gypsy knew that was that she could walk, and I'm pretty sure if Dee Dee could have changed that, she would have. Or they went to different little like fundraisers and all this stuff. But Dee Dee was profiting off of this stuff at the expense of her daughter. That had ultimately nothing wrong with her, which is just terrible. People thought of them as this mother and daughter duo that were just the best of friends, and that they were just inseparable, and they thought they were just the cutest thing together. They got to go to Disneyland together, they got to meet celebrities together, and then they got to do just different types of interviews about, wow, it's so amazing about how you're able to do this stuff despite the fact of your circumstances, and how you guys are just happy, and how you guys are so optimistic. That's so amazing. Gypsy later on would tell people that my mother, if you would see in these interviews, she would always hold my hand, and she would hold my hand, and just in case I would end up saying something that she didn't want me to say, she would squeeze my hand, which is very dark if you think about it. Now, no one knows if that's necessarily true or not, but I mean, I'm going to take her word for it. So fast forward through time, eventually Gypsy starts getting older, and Gypsy starts, like any other teenager, even a normal teenager, let alone this type of situation, the ultimate smothering. She just started wanting to get away from her mother. Gypsy had run away a few times. Her mother's brought her back. She's run away with some like guys before, and her mother has brought a fake birth certificate to say, get away, you are around an underage girl, and I will press charges on you if you do not stop seeing her immediately. And then Gypsy would have no choice but to go to her mom, because she would just assume, well, this is like what happens. And she really did think that she was younger, even though around this time she was probably 18, 19, 20, 21. She was probably a full-grown adult, but she really was treated like a young kid, which is just insane. Eventually, Gypsy ended up going on some online websites to just get away from the pressures of her mom and to just find an escape. And she ended up meeting this guy named Nicholas. I cannot say his last name, so I'll just put it right here. I'll put his name right here. But she ended up meeting this guy, meeting this guy online named Nicholas. And they ended up talking for about a year until like they ended up trying to meet up one time. And that ended up not working out because of Dee Dee, of course. And so they finally just decided, Gypsy let him know, listen, the only way that we're going to be able to be together is if my mom is dead. I'm never going to be able to get away from my mom unless she's dead. Which obviously definitely is not the case. But I mean, how would anyone else be in that mind frame? I don't know. I might think the same thing. I don't know. I honestly don't blame her. I feel like that would drive anyone crazy to like hate your mom. And mind you, she's not really even sure about like all the illnesses. I'm pretty sure she's starting to realize that I'm not as sick as what she's saying. I'm pretty sure she's starting to maybe realize that, because she just wants to break free from her mom. Regardless, she knows she can walk, and she's like, dude, I want to do things. I don't want to be around you all the time, which damn, no shit, right? June 2015 was the day that they executed the plan. Nicholas traveled, because he stayed in a different state, and he traveled all the way to Thursday. And again, I know I'm doing such poor research because I didn't find all these different things. You guys can look into the details if you want to in the case. But he ended up going to the house and staging in a break-in, even though Gypsy was well aware of it. They have all the text messages to prove this. And she hid in the bathroom while he came and he stabbed her to death. And it's crazy. She could hear her mom like yelling for her name and stuff, even though it's like, what the hell is your daughter supposed to do? Your disabled daughter that you claimed, what is she gonna do? Is a guy with a knife? Like, I don't know. Anyways, so then she died. I'm not going to go into the whole how they found out it was them and stuff like that, but let's just say that they did not cover their tracks well at all. Right after it happened, Gypsy wrote a Facebook status basically saying something along the lines of, the bitch is dead, she's finally dead, or something like that. I think that got deleted shortly after, I'm not positive. And they also mailed the murder weapon to Nick's parents' house, which is where Nick also stayed. I'm calling him Nick, I'm giving him a nickname, Nicholas. Please let me stop with that. Okay, they mailed the knife over to Nick's parents' house, which is where that also all got discovered. It's terrible. Fast forward through everything. So obviously Gypsy and Nicholas are on trial for murder. That is when everybody that was around Gypsy's neighborhood and that knew about Gypsy and her mom, that's when they discovered everything. And at first, when they first heard about Dee Dee being murdered, they thought that someone must have kidnapped Gypsy, because of course they're still thinking that, oh my gosh, there's the disabled girl that still has cancer and that's going through all this stuff, someone must have kidnapped her. And when they found out in the trial, seeing her walk in, everyone was shocked. They were like, I cannot believe she's walking. Like, mind you, they're thinking this whole time, hi Jack, they're thinking this whole time when they've seen this girl from when she was young all the way till now, and they're thinking, how is she walking? They're shook. So a lot of them, although they were able to discover in the case that she was a victim of this child abuse, a lot of them were still upset with her as well. But still, a lot of them were very upset with Dee Dee. So it was just this huge thing that came out. And so Gypsy, bless you. So a lot of them were upset about it. But so Gypsy, as a result of this, of course, like, the courts took into account everything that she's went through and all the child abuse and all the stuff that she's resulted in this case. And so she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. I do not like the fact that she is getting that severe of a sentence. Technically it is lighter. She got charged with 2nd degree instead of 1st degree murder, but it's still, I don't know, like, I know something needed to be done, but still, just her going through that the rest of her life, or growing up like that, I just feel like that's the ultimate smothering and the worst, darkest, most evilest thing you can do to someone. What Dee Dee did to Gypsy, and it just makes me so upset. So oh, why do people keep calling me? Leave me alone. Like, see what's going on? I'm just trying to Gypsy ended up getting 10 years, and the other guy, he's still waiting trial, I believe, and it is not looking so good in his favor. Obviously, he's not the one that went through this abuse, so they're going to judge him differently. The lawyers are trying to say that he is severely autistic, and that he has an IQ of 83 or 82 or something like that, and that, and trying to show that. But it doesn't look like that's going to work, even though, if you do see, even though in the documentary it does seem like that could be the case for him, though, but it just kind of, it's very hard to plead like that type of insanity or anything like that. Jack, I don't know what's going on, but you need to calm down. Why couldn't you do this when I was talking about how you got stolen? Like, why couldn't you show your presence then? Look into that case. Very tragic, but honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I'm happy that Dee Dee died instead of Gypsy. And you may be wondering what her dad was thinking when he discovered all this stuff. Her dad felt like shit. He was like, how could I have not known? But Gypsy does not blame her dad at all. She honestly wishes that, you know, she was able to kind of tell him about some of the stuff. Like, for example, I can actually walk, Dad. But again, Dee Dee made it very, very difficult for that to happen. So Gypsy and her dad are actually really, really close now, and her dad, he just feels terrible about the whole thing. And all of Dee Dee's family, when they discover that she died, the first thing that they wondered is, who did she piss off now? Nobody felt sympathetic for her at all. Apparently she's displayed all kinds of really messed up and really dark characteristics and behaviors about her that made her family literally go, keep the ashes, I don't want them, which, damn, that says a lot. The second victim of Munchausen syndrome is Garrett Spears, and the mother was Lacey Spears, and she always claimed that he had severe ear infections, high fevers, seizures, and digestive problems. This case really makes me mad, and you will see why. If you look into this case as well, there's so much that goes into it, so I strongly encourage you guys to look into this. And honestly, sadly, well before she had Garrett, Lacey showed these signs of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. She's babysitted numerous kids. She's had a very high interest in having kids and babysitting kids. Like, she'd babysit kids for free, and all those kids would always get sick as well, and a lot of it would be ear infections and things like that. And if you notice, with people with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, what they usually do is they have a lot of different symptoms that don't necessarily lead to a specific diagnosis. Like, there's stuff that are self-induced symptoms that are usually done by like poison or something like that, such as the ear infection, seizures, or digestive problems, all different things that they can kind of control, but it doesn't necessarily link to a specific disorder, if that makes sense. That's one of the signs that they look for. Even from when Garrett was 5 years old to 4 years old, he was, despite all of his illnesses, or even, stuff that Lacey put him through, he was such a sweet boy. He was very outgoing at the doctor's his office and stuff and wherever he would go, and he would go up to people and talk to them and ask him, hi, how are you doing? How was your day today? And which is so sweet to hear from like a boy that was his young, to be that mindful to ask people how they're doing and how their day was. God, this case just breaks my heart. When Garrett was younger, Lacey got a feeding tube put inside him. She had to go to numerous doctors for this to happen. Like, she's even had to drive like hundreds of miles to be able to get this procedure done. And again, like she said, that he couldn't keep anything down. He was projectile vomiting. He could not keep anything down. So she got this feeding tube put in him, which led ultimately, this was the worst thing that could happen for Garrett. After that, then Garrett started getting really, really sick. And Garrett started having to go to the hospital more and more. And Lacey would post about all of these different things. Like, if you would look at her Facebook, which I'm pretty sure, I wonder if you could find some stuff on it now. I'm pretty sure if you looked online for Lacey Spears' Facebook, she has several postings about Garrett, and it just seems like all she's doing is crying for attention. The last hospital visit that Garrett had, Lacey drove him to the hospital because he was either unconscious or just very, very, very sick. He was in very bad shape. And on her way to the hospital, she stopped, like while they're in the vehicle, she stopped and took a picture of him and posted it on Facebook. Literally and while he's in critical condition, he needs to be in the hospital now. Who does that? A person with this disorder, apparently. Anyways, so the doctors got to Garrett, and they realized that he had such high sodium levels. It was just impossible. They took the test 2 or 3 times because they could not believe that he had that level of sodium in him. They've never seen anything like it. So they had to airlift him and take him to a different hospital. And again, they finally got it to where he was in a kind of semi-stable condition, and they were like, hopefully these will drop and it won't be too much damage done. And they gave Lacey specific instructions. They said, do not give him anything. Don't give him water. Don't give him any type of snack. Don't give him anything. That is very important. And unfortunately, they still let her be alone with him, which it's horrible. So throughout that day, Garrett was expected to at least be a little bit better. Definitely not get worse. And out of nowhere, Garrett dies, and they look into it, and it is because he had a spiked sodium levels that went even higher, which made no sense to the doctors. That's when they immediately decided to open up the case about Munchausen syndrome by proxy, because they said that there was no way that there could be sodium levels in a person unless it was put in there, unless they actually put that in their system. There was no way for that to just happen. They ran through the hospital tapes, and they found Lacey actually putting in salt in his IVs. They caught her red-handed, and as if that wasn't evidence enough, they also got a search warrant, and they found with that search warrant that she had multiple IV bags, and they had the equivalent, each of them, of 69 table salt, like those little salt packets, 69 of those in each of those things. That is very, very toxic. So the jury decided that she was, beyond reasonable doubt, she was guilty of this. It was a unanimous decision, very, very easy, and Lacey till this day claims her innocence. I get so mad thinking about this case because it's terrible. This is definitely a worst case scenario for this, and it can happen, and it's terrible. The third victim is Marshall Mathers and his brother Nathan Samara. I don't know if I said his name right, but we're just gonna go with it. So I don't know if you remember his song, Eminem's song, that was like really, really old, and it was Cleaning Out My Closet. But in there he has some lyrics that are very, very telling that I don't know if you've noticed before. But he says in there, victim of Munchausen syndrome. My whole life I was made to believe I was sick when I wasn't. Now I grew up till I blew up and made you sick to your stomach, doesn't it? Wasn't the reason you made that CD for me, ma? You know? Recognize it? So I looked into it a little bit more, and I will be honest, there's not too much about this case, but it does seem, because with this disorder. It definitely is, I guess, like any disorder. It's on a scale, so it seems, and again, I don't know, but it seems like this is on the lighter end of it. Definitely when it comes to, like, out of the 3 cases that I'm giving, this is definitely on the lighter end of it. But from what I read, like, the mom would constantly give them medications that they did not need, saying that they had hyperactive disorder, which they did not have. And from what it sounds like, Nathan kind of got a little bit of the worst of it. And I say that just because Eminem talks about how he had to go on trial and testify against his mom on behalf of his brother Nathan, because Nathan was, like, too scared to do it, which is understandable. It's his mom. Such a conflict of interest. But another thing that was in the song Cleaning Out My Closet was that Nathan's getting so big, now he's gonna know that you're phony. And that's in the same song, probably like a line or 2 down from what I just read. And I'm wondering, I'm just trying to put the pieces together of everything. Maybe he's saying that because, yeah, like, he's gonna know eventually, like, he's not actually sick and that you're making all this up for your own benefit. But I think it is important to note that Eminem did make a song recently, and it's called Headlight, and the lyrics are very telling. It says, "'Cause till this day we remain estranged, and I hate it though. But I'm sorry, mama, for cleaning out my closet. At the time I was angry, rightfully maybe so. Never meant far to take it though. Never meant that far to take it though, 'cause now I know it's not your fault and I'm not making jokes. That song I no longer play at shows and I cringe every time it's on the radio. And I think of Nathan being placed in a home and all the medicine you fed us and how I just wanted you to taste your own. But now the medication's taken over and your mental state's deteriorating slow. And I'm way too old to cry, but that shit's painful though. But ma, I forgive you and so does Nathan, yo." So with these 3 cases, I thought that it's very interesting that they all each have a different outcome. But this disorder is something that is just very sickening, but it's definitely good to be aware that it is out there. And if you ever have any type of suspicion, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to call CPS or make any type of report, because honestly, this is such a very hard disorder to prove. Unfortunately, it's very, very difficult to prove because, of course, in a court of law, you have to have straight up evidence, and a lot of times doctors have to go as far as recording the doctor's visits and seeing what happens when they're not in the room. So it's usually going to be the mother telling the kid how they feel. Those are different signs that they look at. Usually they'll notice that the mother always talks for the kid, or they'll notice that when the kid's home, the kid gets sicker, but then when the kid's in the hospital, the kid gets better. And then whenever they get sent home, they get sicker again. They'll notice that pattern, and then they'll also notice, like I said, a variety of different symptoms that don't actually lead to a specific diagnosis. Very, very hard to prove, and obviously it takes a lot of time for this to reveal itself as a disorder and as a case. So it's just, all of it is just very sinister, and it's just very upsetting, and it has just caught my interest because I just don't understand why someone would do that. They say that it's usually women that do this, and that's because theoretically, I mean, you know, they are the caregiver, and obviously they're usually, if not always, single mothers. And it's usually because they go through some type of depression, anxiety, and some form of different, like, personality disorders. And they usually, some of them even have been victims of Munchausen syndrome themselves. And sometimes that's the only way that they know how to get any validation, is through pity and empathy in that way, which is very hard for a healthy person to understand, because typically nobody really wants pity like that, but people in this thrive off of that. So it's just very sick. But I'm going to be doing a lot of other cases with this abnormal psychology series, and I'm really excited about it because there's a lot out there, folks. But thank you so much for watching this, and I hope you guys have a great day.